Hello everyone, and welcome to our Smith-Morra DVD. I'm Grandmaster Ronen Har-Zvi that's going to be following together with you, or maybe leading you into the many lines of the Smith-Morra. And if you know, this is the second DVD that I'm producing for online chesslessons.net, and the main idea, logic that I like to show when looking at gambits is first the approach of what happens if I do not follow the gambit. I mean, this opening is extremely popular at the club level player. We do not see, and we will not see, Carlsen, and well, I hope so, you know, they're going to play a World Championship match, Carlsen and Anand, and if there will be, this opening will appear there once or twice, well, then I will have to, I don't know, apologize on my next DVD. But until then, I really do not see many strong Grandmasters playing this. Yes, we have here and there some Grandmasters that use this as a surprise weapon. We have more, you know, 23, 2400. But when we go lower, when we get into the club player, oh, this opening is very popular. It is a big sideline against the biggest opening of them all, the Sicilian. Already on the second move, d4, we are forcing black to take. There is really no other alternative. And c3, for a white player that doesn't want to study the knight of the Sveshnikov, the dragon, the, you name it, you know, whichever opening, whichever version, the Taimanov, the Khan, and so. Alright, white player can just look at c3 and the Smith-Morra, and indeed club players, it's a very big one. It's also many times useful when we see a huge gap in rating, a 2000 player playing against a 2400 or 21 against 2500. Main lines, you know, that Grandmaster or International Master analyzed them for so long. How are you going to surprise him? Sometimes in this gambit we will see it, and indeed there are many surprises. Opening and games are so complicated, some of them are out of the ordinary. If black knows what he's doing, well, of course he should be okay. But, well, if he doesn't, that's a great weapon. So, looking at our third move by white, c3, of course capture is the very main possibility. Of course, this will be most of our DVD. d3, ignoring the capture, is another possibility. And knight f6 is an extremely interesting one. Actually, after the move e5, we are most likely transposing into, well, let's take a picture in our head of this position and see what we are transposing. Let's go all the way to the start and let's play c3, the Alapin. Knight f6 is one of the main lines. The other main line is d5, of course, a bit more positional approach. e6 will in many versions transpose to somewhat looking French. Actually, e5 will be the advanced French, and e takes d5 is another version, many times preferred by white players. But knight f6, e5, knight d5, okay, g3 is possible, bishop c4 is possible, knight f3, some of them actually transpose to same stuff. d4 and take. Hey, what did we have in our previous position? We had it same way, only coming from the Smith-Morra. Let's see how we get it. We play d4, knight if knight f6, if e5, well, we are in the Alapin. So we can see that black has his own ways of getting back into known territory. For example, when I played chess, I'm not playing competitive that much, but I played the knight f6 systems against the Alapin, and considering I never had actually any game against the Smith-Morra, but if I had, most likely I would just play knight f6 and transpose into known territory with the logic of my weaker opponent, assuming I will most likely play this against someone less than Grandmaster level, my weaker opponent, okay, wants to get out of main lines. Okay, let's put him back in main lines. Speaking about the main lines of the Smith-Morra, well, this is really what white wants to get. Well, what's here? Well, white is a pawn down, but we see that he opened the d file and the c file. He's a little bit ahead in development. His bishop is going to go to c4 very quickly, knight f3. Basically just like any other normal gambit. White gives, usually it's a pawn, right? King's gambit. This one, for example, many others, for, I would say, faster development and space. Center and faster development. We will see, black has many systems to play here. Most of them involving e6 and actually delaying a bit d6. We will see some systems with g6. Each system has its advantages and disadvantages. All in all, it is very clear that black should be very okay in those systems. Yet again, if your opponent knows well what to do, well, where can you get real advantage in chess? But there are several players, including, I can just mention, Grandmaster Lenderman, that has played this, well, on his way to becoming a Grandmaster, International Master Esserman, that actually won a brilliant game against a very strong Grandmaster, Luc van Velde, almost 2700. Just looking at this game, when Esserman was many hundred points lower, gives you the idea why we actually get and play those. So let's start with our first knight f6. We will obviously move with all the declining the pawn, and then we will go into the main ones. So let's start with knight f6. Well, e5, of course, transposing into the Alapin. And this is not something that we are going to explore here. Maybe this will be our next video, my next video or DVD, producing the Alapin system, which I like a lot. Played it both for white and black, but would make no sense in putting it into the Smith-Morra. Bishop c4 is of course a possibility, but the pawn will just be captured, and all attempts to capture on f7 with some complications, they are very pleasant for black, either way you want to look at that. For example, capture, capture, check, just go back, and here, well, just capture on c3. I mean, let's say we really against any gambit, alright, and e5 is coming. Well, it's very clear that black king is non-issue here. It's the development, the center. No, nothing to consider here. Queen c2 after knight f6 was also played, but again, those are all some kind of white forcing something that is not really out there. I can mention, not a very top player. He has actually a great name, but not exactly the right one for being world champion. Topalovic. Well, just take the IC at the end. Okay, we're speaking serious, right? Vasilin Topalov, one of the greatest player in the world in the last decade. But Topalovic is a 22-2300 player that consistently playing this line. For example, here he played queen c2. His opponent just followed with knight to c6, knight f3, e5, and yeah, this is actually one possible version that could have gotten. Where is the compensation for white? In the game, actually, black took. Okay, just queen c2, is that really where you want the queen? No, you want the queen on e2 and the rooks on the d and c file. Okay, well, black is already better here, maybe much better. Not much to discuss, and indeed, black went on and won. Black was about 2300 player. The only line really worth considering, I will say, is bishop to d3. Of course, other than e5. Take, but I think black has achieved something a little bit here. In the normal lines, white really want to get to bishop c4 and knight f3, And here, bishop on d3, we will see white still gets compensation, but it is somewhat small, somewhat I feel less in white's intention to have the bishop on d3. Knight c6, knight f3 is most logical move. I mean, bishop g5 was played, and here black can choose just to develop normally, and it just looks perfectly okay. The knight will go to e5. White has to work hard to prove he has something. Both players were around between 21 to 2200. The game was draw, but very pleasant for black. Another version was just immediately d6. Very similar stuff. Castle, and actually white won, but white is just worse, much worse. Our hero from before, Topalovic, against Yellen, 24 plus player. This was played in 1998, and actually there was a tactic here. Knight takes e4 was a very interesting possibility. Not absolutely certain why didn't happen in the game. Okay, knight f3, d6. Of course, black should not allow e5. And now we see again and again in those versions and many different versions here, we see the move h3, which has one purpose: not allowing this bishop on c8 to come to g4, pin, exchange the knight, and then black is gaining control of many of the dark squares in the center very easily. We will see a game between Adams and Nunn, two of the strongest British players in the last 20 years. Nunn is not playing anymore. Adams is actually playing amazing chess in 2013, just as we speak, but used to be top 10 in the world for a long time. h3, that idea appeared in this game. It was with the g6 version. For example, if just playing castle, well, this happened in a game. White was 22 and a bit, black 2400, and black is just better and went on and won this one. h3, most logical way to play. In one game by Topalovic, e5 was played. I find, let's first of all see this game. e5, castle, bishop e7. Okay, this is normal. The queen goes to e2, the rook to d1, and actually there is a little, well, maybe not that little, this square on d5 is, well, something to use. Bishop g5, the idea to take on f6 and use the d5 square. Okay, I mean, all in all, black is better here, no doubt. I mean, white fight for compensation is, I wouldn't say desperate, but seems very remote. I mean, black is just way better here. Actually, once again, white won due to big blunder by black, but the position itself is just a big no-no. This was Topalovic against Gombak. Both players really 22 and tiny bit. Was played in 2002. The other system, very simple, e6 to play. You see that bishop on d3 much nicer on c4, and this is, I feel, the big achievement for a black player. If you can play knight f6 and force your opponent to get into an inferior version, if he has to play the Smith-Morra, well, this is very nice version. For example, here we have a classic example. Black is playing very solid. I know this player is an extremely solid player anyway. He's a Grandmaster. What does white have here? Nothing. Classical example. White is a little less than 2200. Black is Grandmaster Klaus Bischoff from Germany. This was played around 2550. So we have our 300-400 points gap. This was played in 2001, and black went on to win, but more importantly, just the position is better. So let's conclude this first chapter here. Black is not accepting the pawn. His main approach not to accept the pawn, saying, let's go back to the Alpine. I'm okay playing the Alpine. Of course, black has to really play this on normal base against c3. So if white has a wider variety, and I strongly advise and suggest players that really want to play the Smith-Morra with white, okay, but you should know that if your opponent is playing knight f6, make effort to study e5 and, well, look at one of the interesting versions. For example, I can suggest queen takes d4 as a very interesting sideline within the Alapin big topic. It's a very interesting move. I had a game with black against Grandmaster Ian Rogers from Australia. It was a really interesting game. Many other much stronger players than myself had games in this line. Very interesting. And again, for a Smith-Morra player, I think this would complete the repertoire. Queen takes d4 as one alternative. Playing bishop d3, as we've seen, seems quite easy for black to really get okay position. Well, with this we will move to the other major declining the gambit, which is d3, just like that. Although here I think white can establish the center, but let's go to it.